Hello and welcome back to the Case Classroom. I'm Bill Kerr, a professor of entrepreneurial management at Harvard Business School. In this last lesson of the Alvogen case, let's talk about one of the most basic and important functions of entrepreneurs: how to manage the risks of enterprises, especially startups. We all know that entrepreneurship means high opportunity and high risk. I've seen many people start businesses with a gambling mentality. But true entrepreneurs are by no means gamblers. On the contrary, they're masters at risk management. In my opinion, the first and most important thing to do as an entrepreneur is to reduce the largest uncertainties about your business operations. You should avoid unnecessary risks as much as possible. This is critical for the survival of your company. But what I want to show you is that this practice doesn't mean that you need to tackle every risk at once. Of course, you want to avoid risks, but risk can never be completely eliminated for high-impact endeavors. And no matter how much you guard against them, new risks will emerge and require your attention. Second, risk can compound. This is actually a mathematical function. In simple terms, suppose your project has 3 independent tasks that each must be completed. Each of these tasks has a probability of failure of 30%. So is the probability of failure of the entire project also 30%? No, if you do the math, it's actually 66% because all 3 tasks must be accomplished. However, if you can reduce the probability of failure of one of the 3 tasks down to 1%, then you'll reduce the total probability of the venture failing to 51%, a sizable gain. If you also reduce the probability of failure in the second task to 1%, the probability of failure of the total project will be reduced to just over 30%. Another sizable gain, and you can see that the value of the project jumps up each time a risk of failure is eliminated. When I talk about this in my class at Harvard Business School, senior management students are often surprised. I hope you can see that even if you can only solve a single risk each time, you can greatly increase your overall success rate and have a profound impact on the company. For entrepreneurs, the key to managing risk is to determine which are the most important and should be dealt with first, and which ones can be set aside for now. In this lesson, let's explore in more detail how to do this. Of course, managing risk is a big proposition. The specific risks faced by one company or industry may be completely different from another company or industry. So in this lesson, we're not trying to find a universal formula to solve risks, but rather we're exploring a key question. How can entrepreneurs judge which risks should be dealt with first and which ones can be set aside? The first step in managing risk is identifying different types of risks. We all know that risk is a very broad concept. To guide our discussion, I'll divide risk into 4 basic categories. The first type of risk is about the product. Is my product quality good enough? Does my product's design meet user needs? For a consumer goods company, product risk may be that the handle of a toothbrush it sells is easy to break, or that the bristles aren't soft enough, for example. For an online video conferencing company, the product risk may be that the AI translation service it provides isn't sufficiently accurate for real-time conversation. It kind of works, but not really. Addressing product risk often involves careful design, quality assurance, safety testing, and distribution specifications. At Alvogen, as we've seen, even though the founder, Robert Westman, knows the generic industry very well, he still invests resources to create performance management tools such as KPIs and dashboards to effectively reduce product risks. The second type of risk is related to the market. The key to this type of risk is not whether your product itself is good, but whether consumers will accept it, what your competitors will do, and how the laws and regulations in a given market will change. For example, when Uniqlo first entered the U.S. market, it did not understand the cultural differences between the U.S. and Japan. American buyers rejected the clothes as not being sexy enough and found the brand marketing ideas lacking humor and creativity. Uniqlo continued to lose money after entering the U.S. market for 10 years. Additionally, why did Blockbuster close down? It was the #1 video rental service company in the U.S. An important reason was that it did not foresee the rise of Netflix. Ignoring competitors is a fatal market mistake. To manage market risks, first of all, don't fall into the trap of thinking that one size fits all. Instead, adjust or even customize products according to the consumer needs in each market. Second, take precautionary measures. In our earlier lessons, we have seen that Alvogen entered multiple markets at the same time to hedge its overall risk. And when entering a market with an unstable environment, consider establishing partnerships with local companies rather than investing in your own local infrastructure. Then there are the risks associated with the organization itself, mainly the team and its performance. For example, will your employees perform to your expectations? Have you hired the right people? If not, can you find someone better as soon as possible? At Alvogen, Wesman persuaded a group of high-performing leaders who had worked with him at previous companies to join him. At the same time, he used a strong corporate culture and performance management system to effectively avoid organizational risks. When Alvogen's business grew rapidly and the demand for talent continued to rise, Wesman wasn't afraid to fire those employees who couldn't keep up. By 2018, more than 60% of the startup team's original personnel were no longer at Alvogen. And finally, there are also financing risks. Essentially, the risk that you can't raise funds for the company's next stage, which is especially problematic for startups. Financing risk can have several manifestations. For example, investors might not find your business model compelling, or might see that your costs are poorly managed. Investors won't continue to invest if they see this to be the case. You may remember that Wesman lost nearly $300 million in the Icelandic financial crisis, but he still invested his last $2 million in Alvogen at launch. This kind of all-in attitude sends a very positive message to external investors. Then, in 2010, Alvogen faced a serious funding shortage. Morgan Stanley offered to provide debt financing of $50 million, but at a high interest rate of 18%. Alvogen's board of directors felt that the interest rate was too high and didn't want to approve it. In the end, Wesman issued an ultimatum: either buy me out or approve this loan. The board agreed to the loan if he agreed to personally guarantee the debt financing. He got the money that allowed Alvogen to survive. 2 years later, Alvogen was about to run out of cash again. In response, Wesman reorganized the company. 2 weeks before the suspension of business, Morgan Stanley enthusiastically agreed to provide debt financing of $150 million, once again bringing Alvogen back to safety. Managing financing risk means that you as the founder have to be extraordinarily bold and creative at capital operation and corporate restructuring, and have your own skin in the game. I'd like to emphasize one point in particular. To reduce financing risks, you first need to manage all the other risks that we discussed. If your company has a lot of uncertainty, there's a high probability that investors will be scared away. Well, we've just learned the categories of risks. Next, you may ask, how do we deal with these risks? As I mentioned earlier, risks are specific to a given enterprise, and there's no simple and universal formula for solving them. However, we can still assess risks and manage uncertainties at each stage by asking 2 questions. The first question is, what is the company's most significant risk right now? What is that uncertainty that, if it's resolved, changes how people look at this business? Or you can flip it around and ask the opposite question. Of all the challenges the company faces, which ones do not need to be solved immediately? Why do we need to ask these types of questions? I've found that many entrepreneurs focus on the parts of the business that they know best. If they're an engineer, focus is on the technical details. If they're from a marketing background, the focus is on consumer demand. But attention should really go to the most uncertain parts of the business, where insight can really add value. And sometimes this mindset even leads a business to make counterintuitive choices about what to prioritize. Here's an example. There's a company in the United States called Dropbox. Its core business is to provide data storage and synchronization and let users collaborate with each other. Users can store their music, photos, documents, and other files in the Dropbox cloud. When Dropbox was founded in 2007, an important risk was the ability to store data. If it could not guarantee safe, convenient, and large-capacity data storage, its key offering simply would not work. But Dropbox CEO Drew Houston and his team realized that leaders like Amazon had already begun to provide cloud storage services. At least from a technical perspective, data storage was not an uncertainty. Instead, Houston and his team realized that customer acquisition was the biggest uncertainty their company faced. At that time, Dropbox had tested paid search advertising to acquire new customers at a cost of more than $300 per customer. However, the annual subscription fee that a customer paid to Dropbox was only $50, meaning they would take at least 6 years for the company to break even on a given customer. Raising the subscription fee would deter customers, and if the product didn't attract enough customers, the offering would not be able to scale. Therefore, Houston and his team made a decision to outsource data storage solutions to Amazon Web Services during the first 10 years of Dropbox's lifetime, rather than investing the R&D resources and management to develop that capability themselves. Instead, Dropbox put most of its energy into the development of key features that would help it acquire customers more cheaply. Specifically, the company developed advanced sharing functionality that allowed users to collaborate on notes, photos, and documents. This was not only beneficial to the user, it also meant that through their daily use of Dropbox, they were introducing colleagues and friends to the company's products organically. This dramatically reduced Dropbox customer acquisition costs and thus increased its profitability. You see, by prioritizing the most uncertain risk, not the most visible feature, Houston and his team ensured the survival and growth of Dropbox. Of course, it's not enough to identify the most critical risks. To solve it, you have to find a way to learn more about it. Under the pressure of starting a new business, it's easy to ignore the larger context of your company or even miss problems within it. By getting feedback from key players in your business's ecosystem, not only can you gain a better understanding of the risks, you can also course correct your business plan. So the second question you should ask yourself is, who can help you understand the most important unknowns in your business? There's a company called Rent the Runway in the United States, whose core business is to provide women with designer dress rentals. When it was launched, co-founders Jennifer Hyman and Jennifer Fleiss determined that one of the company's biggest risks was whether designers would agree to do business with them. Without access to the designer's latest gowns, the business couldn't get off the ground. So one of Hyman and Fleiss's first moves was to talk to the designers. They quickly learned that the risk that they had envisioned was real and that the business model they had originally envisioned did not work. Designers rejected the idea, worried that women would stop buying their gowns at a premium retail price if Rent the Runway was also offering a rental of the same dress for 10% of the retail price. So Hyman and Fleiss immediately shifted gears. Instead of offering a value option for older women who could already afford designer brand fashion, Rent the Runway now sells to younger women who can't afford to buy designer labels, giving them an opportunity to don designer brands at a lower cost. This change in target market rescued the relationship with the designers and the company. Looking back, Rent the Runway faced a lot of risks at launch, but the feedback from the designers helped them to reduce the most critical ones. In this case, your last challenge question is, think about the questions I just raised with the background of your company's business. Try to think about these questions. What's the most important unknown your company is facing? What unknowns don't need to be addressed right now and why? Who can help you understand the most important unknowns?